This episode is brought to you by Blue Sky CBD. Okay, I don't think I've gotten a full night's sleep since I became a mom, which is like over 4 years now. And I feel like I've tried everything, but none of it worked. You know what did? Blue Sky CBD. I love Blue Sky CBD because each gel contains 25 milligrams of CBD and 25 milligrams of CBN and 0 THC. Check out Blue Sky CBD Sleep Gel 4-pack sampler for just $6 or their 10-pack sample for $20 at bluesky-cbd.com. Oh, and you can use promo code CityCastDenver to get 30% off your order. Just go to bluesky-cbd.com. This episode is brought to you by AEG Presents. The official concert lineup for the 2026 season at Red Rocks is here. Get your tickets now for Jason Isbell in the 400 unit on Saturday, May 2nd, or grab seats for the Head and the Heart on July 15th and 16th. Plus, don't miss Mount Joy, who are celebrating their 10-year anniversary with shows on August 13th and 14th at Colorado's world-famous venue. Get your tickets now at redrocksonline.com. That's redrocksonline.com. Today on CityCast Denver, two mayor mics, Johnston in Denver, Kaufman in Aurora. Both are tackling homelessness, but with very different strategies. So today I'm talking to Denverite reporter Kyle Harris, who's been covering both, including the new shelter Kaufman just helped open and Johnston's proposal for a new street ambassadors program. Today is Monday, November 24th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Kyle Harris, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thanks. It's good to see y'all.
So I want to start with what's new in Denver. And I guess to catch people up if they're totally new to this, our current mayor, Mike Johnston, was elected on the promise of ending unsheltered homelessness in his first term. He bought some old hotels to convert to transitional housing, which was his, quote, housing first strategy. What do you think are the results of his first 2 years?
Well, so if you listen to what the mayor has to say about it, and I think this is echoed in a lot of people's experience, they're seeing fewer encampments, right? He, quote unquote, ended encampments, large scale encampments, brought people straight from there into hotels. The result has been very pleasing from what I'm hearing to kind of the business class, to residents in pretty dense areas where there were quite a few encampments. What's happened to people once they get into the hotels is like a whole nother set of questions, some of which we know and some of which I think there's more to understand.
What are some of those issues, do you know, from
Sure.
looking at it?
Well, there are people who did manage to go from those hotel rooms, which, as the mayor talks about, are transitional housing or transitional shelter, into more permanent housing, subsidized in some way. Maybe they get a job. Maybe they have family reunification. Other people really didn't thrive in those shelters and in some cases were kicked out and are back on the street. And we've seen in the city this pretty intense push to get rid of the tents. The tents were a symbol of a kind of economic collapse in the city. And so now you have people outside without tents. You have people who are no longer concentrating in the city center, even though there are a lot of services down here. They are pushed to the outskirts of town, in some cases moving into suburbs, and kind of all over the map. And, you know, there are all sorts of municipalities that talk about trying to get services to people, wraparound services, all of that. It's a real struggle.
I think it just gets to the complexity, too, of trying to make something like this happen.
Yeah, I mean, you have tons of individuals, each with their own stories, experiences, issues, just trying to figure out how to navigate both a challenging economy and a healthcare system that is not delivering for them. You also have with the mayor, from what he says, an increase in quality of life enforcement going on. So that means more interactions between police and people who are committing very low-level crimes. So let's say they are using drugs in public or engaged in vandalism or shoplifting. The mayor has really concentrated energy from the police department in addressing those in different ways. And at the same time, the JIDs and the BIDs and all these different community groups have their own private security, and in some cases, ambassadors who go out and kind of try to move people along. It's a really hard city right now to stay in one place in if you're poor.
I do just want to say to the healthcare component too, though, I know Denver Health is just like, it takes on everybody. So I can see where we do have, they're the safety net hospital, as they're called, for the state. So, I mean, I don't want to say they're trying their best, but they really are. I just see how complicated it can be because there's no one solution for everybody.
Absolutely. I've done some reporting recently on the Denver jail, and Sheriff Diggins describes the jail as the #1 mental health provider in the city, and that's true. They've also seen some pretty serious staffing shortages, cuts, et cetera there. So, you have the jail set up as a mental health center. You have an overwhelmed Denver Health situation. And really, since the 1970s, we haven't had state-run hospitals where people with profound mental health issues can go. And those in and of themselves at the time were overcrowded, were challenging, had too few psychiatrists.
Had a lot of people in them that were maybe not. That was not the issue for them. Like we saw institutionalization of disabled people, for instance. But I can see why it was such a big thing to take on. Another thing, though, that you mentioned is open drug use. And I have empathy for those folks, but I can see why a lot of people are like, this is not good. I don't want to see this. And also, I don't want my kids to see it. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of layers.
There are a lot of layers. I mean, it's always interesting to me the kinds of open drug use that the city prohibits.
Sure.
So say smoking fentanyl, shooting heroin back in the day, using meth. And then, at the same time, our city boosters absolutely love public drug use when it comes to alcohol and creating spaces where people can drink freely in public. If you go back 100 years, if you go back 50 years, the #1 issue city boosters were trying to stop was public drinking. And now we have a city that's enamored with this as an idea, which I just find to be such a sweet irony.
Yeah, it's a very complex thing because also I can see where the needle usage is a little bit more disturbing or and also a health risk, right? I mean,
absolutely.
So, well, this is interesting, this initial approach he took because Mayor Johnston has been changing his strategy up a little bit. He's maybe moving away from housing first. What are the changes you've seen?
So I wouldn't say that when I talk to the mayor, I get a sense that he is no longer committed to housing first. He still sees this as the way. What you're seeing with the mayor is that he is very convinced that he has ended encampments across the city. And so he's moved into what he's calling kind of stage 2, the next stage of addressing unsheltered homelessness. For him, this means not tolerating people who are sleeping outside in winter protective gear. It means moving them on, trying to get them into services, trying to get them some sort of access. Or if folks are what a lot of people call service resistant, using police or law enforcement as a part of that equation. Though when I talk to Police Chief Thomas, he says, well, we're not really in the business of making many more arrests right now. Sheriff Diggins says, yeah, I mean, we have a serious issue here, but we're not expecting a massive overcrowding of the jails coming from Johnston's use of law enforcement. Interesting.
So I think the latest development, that's something that 9 News reported last week, was that City Council approved Johnston's request for $11 million for a new ambassador program. Do you know what this is supposed to look like?
Well, my understanding, so the ambassador program, I think, made its way through committee, and it was a pretty hot button issue in the committee. That money will be used to pay for a group called Urban Alchemy, and I believe also some of the money is going to some other organizations. Urban Peak may be in there as well. The idea is that you have these kind of quote-unquote ambassadors who walk through the streets, and their primary focus is trying to get people some sort of assistance, some sort of help. They also have a secondary function, which is, hey, you want to know where the great pizza shop is? You want to know how to get to the baseball game? Here's how. And so they're kind of in this really interesting dual function that is very different for our city's housing department, which is focused on eviction, focused on homelessness, focused on housing. Suddenly these folks are in this kind of dual role. And it's fascinating because, one of the concerns from council members is like, well, why is this living in the housing department? And the housing department says, well, yeah, it's a It's a new change for us as well.
Yeah, I think that's what I saw too was council people, Chantel Lewis and Sarah Parody in particular pushed back on that. Like also from, I think they were saying from a funding perspective, like why are homeless services funding greeters in the city?
Exactly. And this is a taxpayer homelessness resolution fund that would be funding this. So it's not necessarily the full functionality of these folks is not just homelessness resolution. And I think that's where their criticism comes from.
And also, you did bring this up that when it moved from a city council committee, it has not like gone to a full vote yet. Do you know why the mayor's maybe shifting to this approach now?
Well, I think he has had a lot of pushback from community members, from Do Better Denver, from other folks who say, hey, like you got rid of the encampments, but there's still people breaking down all over the streets and we need to move them on. And Johnston's in a kind of He has two commitments, right? One is to get people housed. The other is to keep the city safe, to keep it clean. And I think his view is that the folks who are outside now didn't accept the city services, didn't go to the hotel shelters, and are somehow therefore kind of part of different systems, whether that's, again, urgent mental health stuff, whether that's urgent addiction treatment stuff, or whatever the case may be.
This episode is brought to you by the Ballpark District. Celebrate the holiday season at Elfin' Around Ballpark, December 13th from 3:30 to 8 p.m. Explore and sip, snack, and shop your way to cool prizes and collect stickers in Denver's ballpark community. Think bingo meets bar crawl, but with bells on. There's a little something for everyone who could use a little holiday magic at this fun and free event. No need to sit on the shelf this season, as this event is designed for solo explorers and large groups alike. Don't miss out on a chance to ring in the holidays the ballpark way and win cool prizes donated by local businesses and other fun ballpark favorites, including the Hello Colorado Rockies prize package. Elf or other festive attire is encouraged. No purchase necessary to participate. Bar locations and the Elfin' Around after party are 21 and up. Start your journey at any of the businesses or check in at the official workshop at 2101 Larimer Street, where a gift awaits. Find out more at elfinaroundballpark.eventbrite.com or find the Ballpark Denver on Instagram and Facebook. Let's talk about what's new in Aurora, because it's a different approach that Mayor Mike Hoffman is taking, and he has taken different approaches in the past. He and Johnston have really butted heads on this issue in particular. But Kaufman's been talking about taking more of this, quote, work first approach, which he's been talking about for several years. But now they have a brand new shelter putting that into practice. And you reported on this. It's got 3 tiers. Can you explain how the Aurora program is supposed to work?
Yeah. Okay. So work first is this theory that before people can be rewarded with housing, they need to work. Kaufman has been a proponent of this historically. I think he veers toward that. This shelter, he says, is not quite that. And I think it's important, to distinguish between the outcome, which is this 3-tiered system, and then like work first. You've got to get a job and then do the thing to get housing. So it's at the Crowne Plaza Hotel. It's, this massive facility. And when we talk about 3 tiers, there's tier 1, which looks a lot like a very new conventional homeless shelter. There are cots in the room. You can't stay there 24 hours. There is a day shelter in the front area, kind of in the lobby where convention goers might have signed in at one point, where people can access nonprofits and other service providers. But in tier 3, you don't have a very high bar of behavior, right? So you can be using fentanyl, you can be drunk, you can be dealing with severe and untreated mental health issues, and they will make room for you as long as you don't essentially fight someone or stab someone or whatever.
And you get 2 cold meals, I believe, was the specifics, or a few.
You get 2 cold meals, and I think maybe 1 warm one. I can't quite remember the food makeup. So there's that place. If you're staying there regularly, and you can stay there as long as you need, and you connect with a caseworker and say you're committed to maybe doing some job training or finding a job, you can move into tier 2. And when you go into the tier, they're right next to each other. The tier 2 space is fascinating because it's these kind of like sci-fi looking pods. You'll have a twin bed, a few bookshelves, like a place to lock your stuff. You can have this kind of little pod area, and there are a number of them just back to back, row to row. And you can stay there for some time as you go through the workforce training program, as you maybe start working on sobriety, getting mental health treatment, whatever your personal situation might be. But the standard there is that you're moving toward employment. Now, let's say you go sober. Let's say you get a job. You can then move into what they're calling Tier 3. And this looks a lot like, in some ways, looks a lot like Denver Mayor Mike Johnston's homeless hotel shelters. And, so then suddenly you're on the top floor, or at least one of the high floors of the Crowne Plaza Hotel. You have a hotel room. You're paying 30% of your income, or around $1,000 a month, to stay there. You're getting nicer meals, and you get nicer meals in Tier 2 as well. You're expected to be working. You're expected to be maintaining sobriety. And if you fall out of either of those things, it may be that you move back down to Tier 2. And let's say you're no longer working at all on any of this stuff. Hey, you might wind back in Tier 1. To me, what's really interesting about the Tier 3 hotel room shelters, though, is that, like, oh my God, for $1,000, I can get a studio apartment, right?
Yeah, I wondered about that cost.
Yeah, it's a really there are services provided, so there are benefits.
Yeah, I was going to say services and food
there.
and
exactly, and you can stay there
security.
For 2 years. After 2 years, you have to find something else. But yeah, so I'm very curious in watching what people choose to do between that sort of Tier 2 and Tier 3 phase. If they decide to just say, "Hey, like I got a job, I'm going to be independent," or are they really benefiting from the services this facility offers?
Why do you think Mayor Kaufman's taking this approach, or why does he think it's the right one?
Well, I think it's kind of a happy medium between housing first and work first. It's not necessarily housing first, because it's not literally housing first.
It's a shelter, yeah.
Yeah.
Shelter model at the beginning.
I think from his perspective, there are a lot of different folks with a lot of different needs, and this kind of one facility can match all of those different needs. So I think he's excited about that. There's also, Kaufman is a Republican. He's traditionally very conservative, and the model that he has uses a minimum amount of government funding. It's about $2 million a year for safety, for cleaning, stuff like that. And then the nonprofit that runs the thing actually has to raise about 75% of the funding to keep the thing going. So if you want to talk about like private-public partnerships, the private in this instance is doing a ton of the fundraising work. And I think for I think for conservative folks, having government take a smaller role has a lot of appeal. In Denver, the city spent, more than $100 million on homeless hotels. I'd have to go look at the latest numbers, but it's been quite a lot of money.
Significant, sure.
It's been a lot of money, and that's come straight from tax dollars. I think Kaufman sees this as a sort of conservative alternative to that sense in Denver and from Johnston that, hey, government actually does have a responsibility to pay more toward solutions.
Looking at these two approaches, like how the actual models work and then the funding mechanisms for each of them for Denver and Aurora, do you think it's fair to compare these two operations?
Well, I think it's natural to compare the two operations. I mean, you have two mayors both named Mike in adjacent cities, large cities in Colorado.
This is the Mike. These are the various Mike models.
You have the Democratic Mike, the Republican Mike, both kind of traditional in their approach to their partisanship. So, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the things when I think about Aurora versus Denver is if I'm living in my car, if I'm living on the street, and there's not really a whole lot of substantive difference between crossing, Yosemite or not. And there's a sense that okay, these are two different cities when you're talking about tax dollars or municipal government. But as a resident of the area who lives pretty close to the Aurora border, I don't think a whole lot about where I am. And one of the things regionally I think we're kind of having a reckoning with is what happens when different municipalities are essentially sharing the exact same folks who are in need. You have a family living in a car. They may get moved around by the police, that sort of thing. One night they might be in Aurora. One night they might be in Lakewood. One night they might be up in Fort Collins. And I've talked to families who've been in all of those different situations from night to night to night. And there isn't necessarily a robust regional approach to these issues. So yes, compare them, but also I think they wind up becoming part of kind of a larger regional ecosystem, whether the mayors are collaborating or not.
That's kind of my last question is like, can collaboration, do you think they're ready to work together? Because Kaufman and Johnston took very different approaches to the influx of newcomers that we got. That was a huge point of contention between them. They really butted heads on that. So do you think they would be able to come together in some way, or?
I've not seen a lot of evidence of that yet in terms of actual human behavior. So could they? Absolutely. I mean, would it be to the benefit of the metro if mayors across all these cities were working closely, collaboratively, sharing resources, sharing strategies, maybe taking on different strategies in the different communities? Absolutely. And like, there is always room for people to collaborate. I have not seen evidence that that's happening. For example, when they did the big ribbon cutting for the Crowne Plaza Hotel, Mayor Mike Johnston from Denver was not there, right? I mean, this is his big issue. This is his signature political issue, and he chose not. Well, he did not come.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's it's interesting to think about the optics of it versus the reality. You know, like, have they been talking behind the scenes? We don't know. But the different municipalities part is really interesting to me because I think about a place like Commerce City that like didn't have any services at all, and then all of a sudden they're getting more folks maybe from other places, and they just don't even have the infrastructure to do it. But we've got these two municipalities right next to each other that are large populations that have the infrastructure. It just looks different in both.
Absolutely. And I think it's all, I mean, I can talk about regional all day long, but then there are questions, can the state do more? Can the federal government do more? Homelessness has often been a subject addressed by municipal governments. Oftentimes, homelessness is the product of national trends. So a national housing crisis, a national drug crisis, right? These are a lack of mental health services that's national. So, you know, there's a big question here about whether municipalities are tackling something that is way beyond the scope of what they can do with local taxes.
Kyle, thank you so much. This was really insightful.
Hey, thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why don't you take a minute to tell Mayor Mike Kaufman about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And remember, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Denver neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye.